My name's Nancy Golan. I'm the director at Cabrini Retreat Center in Des Plaines, Illinois, and I'm here with Sister Bridget Zanin, who's the director of the National Shrine. Today, our session will be in a webinar format, which is different than what we have used in the past for other MSC National Shrine meetings that were in a meeting format. So we'll see slides, we'll see our presenters. We won't see one another with the Brady Bunch look of other sessions, but at the end of the session, if you hang in there, we will have an opportunity to have a conversation via a link that will appear in your chat button. If you're unfamiliar with Zoom, at the bottom on the left, you will see your controls for sound and camera. Again, you will not appear or be able to be heard during the webinar. At the middle, you should see some different functions that you can work on. There's the chat where you can put your location if you haven't done that. There's a raise hand icon, which we won't be using right now, but we'll use during the question and answers. And
Barbara has the link.
There is also a section where during the presentation, if you have a question that you would like to pose to our presenters, you can put it in the Q&A choice, and we will try and get to all of those questions. The format today will be an initial welcome by the folks in Chicago, followed by a formal presentation. Sister Bridget will be introducing Nick and Michelle. That'll last about 25 minutes. Then there'll be a question and answer session. That'll last about 10 minutes, a little bit more formal. And then with the nod to the Cabrinian conversation spirituality, at the end of that, there will be a link in the chat function that would take you to a more informal conversation if you're able to stay and join us for that. This session is being recorded. So if there are friends and family or colleagues that are not able to be with us now, that link will be available through the National Shrine website. I'm going to hand it over to Sister Bridget.
Yes, my name is Sister Bridget. I am the director of the National Shrine at St. Francis Cabrini here in Chicago. And I want to say good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Dreaming of a Single Human Family. It is good to be here. We appreciate your attendance and your support. This is a critical time for us to think of our brothers and sisters who are looking for freedom and for a better life. Mother Cabrini was inspired by the gospel and committed herself to serve immigrant communities. Today we will hear from Dr. Nicholas Rademacher. Dr. Rademacher is the chair of religious study at the Cabrini University in Pennsylvania. He obtained his PhD at Catholic University of America. He is a published author of journals and books. He served as vice president of the American Catholic Historical Society. With him today is Michelle Sherman. Michelle is a former campus, she is the present campus ministers for retreats at Villanova University. She is a former Cabrini Mission Corps missionary. She holds a BA in Humanistic Study from St. Mary's College in Notre Dame, and an MA in Theology and a certificate in Spiritual Direction. Dr. Rademacher and Michelle Sherman are a husband and wife team. We wish them the best, and we're looking forward to their presentation today. So please take it over.
Oh, thank you so much, Nancy and Sister Bridget, for your warm welcome. Welcome to everyone who's joining us today. We're so delighted to join you and the broader MSC community and friends for this series, especially to extend and celebrate the ways that Mother Cabrini spread the gospel and tirelessly worked to promote the well-being of the immigrant communities that she encountered.
In our talk this morning, we hope to convey that her story is relevant and contemporary. Tragically, the human suffering and root causes of that suffering around immigration are with us 100 years after her passing. We hope that these highlights of her history and legacy and her spirituality will help to frame the coming talks in the series by Abel Rodriguez and Ray Ward. There are several general themes that we hope to touch on during our talk this morning.
One of them being the compassion and commitment to welcome and respond to the needs of immigrant communities.
Mother Cabrini's own and her sister's willingness to confront their own biases and those of their counterparts in the United States.
Making the preferential option for the poor and living in solidarity with the communities they served.
And Cabrini's universalizing vision, one that transcended the United States to encompass all of the Americas and beyond.
So our hope is that these remarks might contribute to the ongoing conversation around the contemporary relevance of her legacy, especially in light of the contemporary global migration crisis.
So we'll begin with a note about her relevance today and then explore some highlights of her history. The people of the United States, again, over 100 years after her passing, continue to honor her legacy. As many of you probably know, Mother Cabrini Day recently became the first state holiday in Colorado to honor a woman. In New York City, a statue of Mother Cabrini was unveiled late last year in Manhattan. While dedicating the statue, the governor extolled the saint's virtues. He identified the values of Mother Cabrini as compassion, acceptance, community, freedom, faith, hope, and love. From an international perspective, Pope Francis celebrated Mother Cabrini on January 15th, 2017, the World Day of Migrants and Refugees. He acknowledged the centenary of her passing and noted her legacy as the patron saint of migrants. After the Angelus, he said, "This courageous sister dedicated her life to bringing the love of Christ to those who are far from their homelands and families." He commended those today who work with migrants to welcome and support them in their difficulties, just as he encouraged them to persevere in the work after her example. He said, "May her witness help us to take care of our foreign brothers and sisters in whom Jesus is present, often suffering, rejected, and humiliated." He concluded, "Encountering different cultures is always an enrichment for all." For many of you, this brief overview will be very familiar. For those new to her story, hopefully this snapshot into Mother Cabrini's history will inspire you to learn more. Maria Francesca Cabrini was born on July 15, 1850, in the village of Sant'Angelo Lodigiano in the Lombardy region of Italy. She was a survivor of illness and near-death experience. She became a teacher and eventually discerned a vocation to become a missionary, eventually forming the Institute of the Missionaries of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. She adopted the name of the Jesuit missionary who inspired her, St. Francis Xavier. Many people told Cabrini that she could not become a missionary because she was a woman. She was told that such a vocation was not appropriate for a woman given the dangers and rigor of that particular ministry. Nevertheless, she persisted and insisted because she knew that she was fulfilling a divine commission. Ultimately, she met with success, as on November 14, 1880, the community was issued a degree of foundation as missionary sisters. As Sister Mary Louise Sullivan, biographer of Mother Cabrini, explains, the MSCs were the first group of Italian women religious to bear the formal title of missionary sisters, and only the second female congregation formally recognized by the church with the official title of missionaries. Cabrini sailed for New York at the behest of Pope Leo XIII, who famously affirmed her missionary objective with the expression, and I'm sure if I paused, you could all fill in the blank, not to the east, but to the west. Thus, Cabrini's dream to be a missionary was fulfilled, though she was directed toward the Americas rather than her first choice, Asia. Although she had been invited by two bishops, Scalabrini and Corrigan, Mother Cabrini and her sisters were not warmly welcomed in the United States. There was nowhere for them to stay when they landed, so they passed their first night in a vermin-infested rooming house where they could not sleep for the wretched conditions. Eventually, housing was provided in the area of their missionary work among the people whom they served. Still, the convent where they lived was squalid. In spite of the destitution, Sister Mary Louise Sullivan explains, the convent became a haven for the children of the area who did their small part to help the sisters. Mother Cabrini and her missionary sisters moved relentlessly across the United States, founding institutions in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, Mississippi, Illinois, Colorado, the state of Washington, and California. They started hospitals, orphanages, and schools, while also undertaking various social outreach programs aimed at assisting Italian immigrants wherever they were. Pope Leo XIII, Bishop Scalabrini, and others invited Mother Cabrini to the Americas because they were concerned about the growing Italian diaspora. Italians in the United States in particular suffered relentless poverty and social and political marginalization. Approximately 1.3 million Italians arrived in the United States between 1880 and 1902. By 1920, Italians were more than 10% of the US foreign-born population. They left Italy for numerous reasons, especially in search of economic opportunity. The earliest wave of immigrants came from the northern part of Italy, where Mother Cabrini was born. These immigrants were skilled artisans looking for new markets. Later waves of Italian immigrants came from the southern part of Italy. The people in this group were farmers and laborers looking for work. 70% of the Italian population was illiterate. When they came to the United States, they lived in cramped, close quarters. And because they were unskilled labor, many had no choice but to work in dangerous conditions in sweatshops. Think of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City in 1911. Most Italian immigrants expected to return to Italy sooner than later. They did not intend to stay here for the long term. These immigrants sent or took home to Italy between $4 million and $30 million each year. I have a short passage I'd like to read from a resource that's available on the Library of Congress website concerning Italian immigrants to the United States. It gives a snapshot into the harsh reality of the immigrant community and their working conditions. So I'm quoting here. Many thousands of Italian immigrants found themselves prisoners of the patron system of labor. The Padroni were labor brokers, sometimes immigrants themselves, who recruited Italian immigrants for large employers and then acted as overseers on the work site. In practice, many Padroni acted more like slaveholders than managers. A Padrone often controlled the wages, contracts, and food supply of the immigrants under his authority and could keep workers on the job for weeks or months beyond their contracts. Some Padroni built vast labor empires, keeping thousands of workers confined in locked camps behind barbed wire fences patrolled by armed guards. The Padrone system, despite its many injustices, was not eradicated until the middle of the 20th century. So that description of this labor system gives us an insight into the kinds of conditions that Mother Cabrini and her sisters were facing as they tried to labor and work and minister to the Italian immigrant community in the United States. The urgency of the sisters' work was intensified by the malicious anti-Italian sentiment in the United States. The sisters experienced this bias firsthand, and so they developed strategies to try to counter it. For example, even in matters of dress, namely their veils and habits, Mother Cabrini and her sisters sought to convey a positive image of the Italian people to the US public. Non-Italians in the United States used dehumanizing terms to refer to Italians. Mother Cabrini explained that they were careful with their appearance in part because, she wrote, quote, otherwise they will call us guinea pigs the way they do the Italians here, end quote. To another correspondent, she wrote, quote, the field is so vast to do good for our poor Italians who are abandoned and very much looked down upon by the English-speaking public. She continued, they cannot bear the sight of the Italians, end quote. Even Catholics in the United States who came here from other parts of Europe looked down on the Italian immigrants. Mother Cabrini and her sisters stood with their community even in the face of racialized violence. They were in New Orleans during the arrest, trial, and extrajudicial murder of Italians who were accused of killing Police Chief David C. Hennessy, who had been shot to death in the streets of New Orleans on the night of October 15, 1890. Officials rounded up, imprisoned, and tried 13 Italian men. There were no witnesses and there was no evidence connecting the accused to the crime. They were acquitted by a jury. After the acquittal, the charge arose in the general public that the mafia had influenced the jury to set them free. Of course, there was no evidence of this. But taking the law into their own hands, a large mob gathered and stormed the prison where the accused were being detained. They shot several of the accused and hanged the remainder. And so the image that you see here is an artist's depiction of that event. This lynching of Italians was not an isolated incident. In the Deep South, some 29 Italian men were executed in this manner between 1866 and 1910. They were a target because they did not fit in. As one historian explained, they spoke a strange language and, as Catholics, practiced a religion that many American Protestants viewed with contempt and suspicion. Furthermore, they were not considered white given their dark complexion and other physical characteristics. In serving this community, these sisters from Northern Italy confronted their own prejudices against Southern Italians. As Mary Louise Sullivan documents in her biography of the saint, still they overcame those culturally conditioned biases through personal relationship building and shared experience. Mother Cabrini and her sisters refused to abandon the communities that they served. They chose to live among the people, sharing their poverty, their cramped living quarters, and other hardships that the Southern Italians endured. Mother Cabrini became a US citizen on October 9th, 1909, in part a sign of the solidarity that Cabrini felt with people among whom she and her sisters lived and whom they served. Cabrini passed away in 1917 at Columbus Hospital in Chicago, now the site of the National Shrine of St. Francis Xavier Cabrini. She was 67 years old and had founded 67 houses for the Institute during her active ministry, amounting to one for every year that she was alive. Cabrini's path to sainthood was fast-tracked. Rather than wait the requisite 50 years from her passing, Cabrini's cause was taken up in 1936, less than 20 years after she died. She was declared blessed in 1938, and she was canonized by Pius XII in 1946. In 1950, she was named Patroness of Immigrants. Subsequent popes have also praised Cabrini's work and held her up as a model for Christians. Most recently, Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis, as we saw at the beginning of the talk. So Mother Cabrini is frequently identified with the United States. The institute that she founded encompassed all of the Americas, however, and indeed the entire world. Mother Cabrini's movements across the United States were punctuated by visits to Europe and Latin America. Her missionary activity in Europe encompassed Italy, France, Spain, and England. In Latin America, Cabrini established foundations in Nicaragua, Panama, Argentina, and Brazil. Her meditation from the Isthmus of Panama eloquently characterizes her global vision. In a letter addressed to her sisters, Mother Cabrini wrote, "Here on the Isthmus, we really are at the apex of the world. The position of the house is such that I imagine I can see every part of the earth in that immense space of water which is in front of us." And even as she enjoyed rest from a long and exhausting journey, she declared, that immense space of water, serves as an object of meditation, and this is not disturbed by the desire I have of taking the first vessel that sails to the places where the need is the greatest. But where shall I go? Mother Cabrini would determine where next to go through a discernment process based in large part through prayer, identifying areas of greatest need, and through conversation with the broader Catholic community. She was sustained by a distinct spirituality that Michelle will share with us now.
Thanks. So I love that, that passage from the Isthmus, because it speaks to that global vision, that sense of openness, that too small a world, the world is too small for me, that Mother Cabrini would reflect on often in her travels. And so that being said, as we step into this, sort of pivot and step into a conversation around her spirituality, just to know that there are so many aspects of Mother Cabrini's spirituality that we could highlight. But I've chosen in the time that we have to focus on three key areas. One, as Nick has talked about, the missionary vocation, devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and then also the spirit of disponibilita. And with many spiritualities, we see that all of these pieces are very much integrated. It's not like there's ones that we can separate out and parse out. So just to keep that in mind, there are definitely more pieces too, but these are the three that I'll focus on today. And then Nick had mentioned the new statue of Mother Cabrini that's now found in Battery Park. And so I offer that as an image for us to sit with and contemplate as we step into her spirituality. So a life and calling rooted in mission. I thought it would be nice to just simply offer some quotes, one of which is directly from Mother Cabrini herself. She writes, "As I see it, the mission is this: loving other human beings wherever they are in the world and letting them know that there is a God who loves them unconditionally now as they are." I find myself often going back to this quote because, one, it's so simple, and two, I think sometimes in spiritual spaces, there's a sense of I have to be like more perfect than I am right now for God to love me, or I have to prove myself to God. But Mother Cabrini says no, that there's this unconditional love now that we need to recognize as we are. And it's often in those spaces that we want to hide from the world or not talk about that God is waiting to love us. And then secondly, here's a quotation from the first International Cabrini and Education Congress in Rome in 1987 that I really appreciate because it speaks to the spirituality and then faith in action. So they write, "The missionary spirit of Mother Cabrini enables us to better understand the signs of our time and to perceive those of the future. With the power of the gospel, this same missionary spirit is capable of penetrating and transforming historical structures and social realities. Missionary spirit, solidarity, and respect for historical roots and cultural traditions are constants that permeate the thought and work of Mother Cabrini." And so I would add to that the thought, the work, and the spirituality of Mother Cabrini, faith in action, that this call and missionary spirit is an invitation to transformation of historical structures, social realities, to bring about a more just, more peace, nonviolent world. Secondly, the Sacred Heart of Jesus as an invitation to transformation. Yesterday, we were having a practice call with Nancy and Sister Bridget, and I asked Sister Bridget, is there an image of the Sacred Heart that is that's either particular to the Guadalupe province of Sister, or that is really well known at the shrine? And she got very excited and she said, "Oh yes, there's one that we believe is to be the favorite image of the Sacred Heart that Mother Cabrini loved, and it's right out in the hall." So she runs out into the hall, grabs the picture off the wall, and takes the picture and sends it to us. So in case you haven't been to the Cabrini Shrine in Chicago, we offer this image of the Sacred Heart. In her travels in 1894, she writes, "Know how to alleviate pain, dress wounds, console the troubled, and strengthen the weak with the precious balm of the love of Jesus's heart." Going back to the heart of Jesus is a place where Mother Cabrini often found herself just continuing to go back to the heart. Her prayers, her prayer journal of a trusting heart, often writes about wanting to make her heart one with Jesus, going back to what breaks Jesus's heart, what enlivens and energizes and gives joy. She wants to be right there. And then one of the things that I love about the Sacred Heart image, just to call attention to that, is the open hands too. So we have this image of a heart that is on fire, that is in some ways and so in love with humanity that it comes out of Jesus's chest, coupled with these open hands of invitation. And then of course, most of us who are in the Cabrini family could probably quote Philippians 4:13, "I can do all things in Christ who strengthens me." That sense of courage, that sense of as we go and return to the heart of Jesus, that we can do in God's name. Coupled with Mother Cabrini's wisdom on staying well and honoring limits. So there's this beautiful balance I find in her spirituality, where there's this sense of courage and go out and mission, also with let's take care of ourselves. So she writes from the Mother House in Rome in 1907, be mindful always that we cannot give what we do not possess. And a missionary must supply himself abundantly with the oil of charity if she is to dispense it daily to those in need. I remember as a missioner handwriting this out and putting this on my desk in campus ministry. And I admit the first time I read this, I thought the oil of charity, that's like kind of dated language, but again, Mother Cabrini was a product of her time. And so I sat with that. What does the oil of charity look like? What do I need to keep going back to? Whether that was more stillness practices, whether that was practicing yoga or doing something for me that would continue to refill my cup during a time of service and output and action. So I just love that about Mother Cabrini too, that wisdom, staying well and honoring limits. And lastly, the spirit of disponibilita, this idea of availability, flexibility to go where needed. And to have that availability and openness and flexibility to go where needed, there's also almost like a step one of that, to have an awareness of current events, the social realities, and an openness to respond. So to see the world with eyes wide open, the image of Mother Cabrini praying with the Bible in one hand and newspaper in the other comes to mind. A spirit of collaboration, which from the beginning she wanted to involve lay partners, and then a spirit of abundance and creativity over scarcity. And that goes with disponibilita and also that courage aspect, that not to be held back by fears in order to be creative and start something new. And we see that multiple times in her life, crossing the Atlantic multiple times, even despite her fear of water from when she was younger and almost. And then I love this quote. I said, "Oh, Nick, we have to include this one because this one we had in our wedding program." And I think it's just so appropriate to faith and action. So Mother Cabrini says, "Today love must not be hidden. It must be living, active, and true." And that sense of love being living, active, and true, I just invite you to consider, what does that look like for you right now? Where have you seen love, which was living, active, and true? Almost that litmus test of what love looks like in public. So as I was preparing this slide, I actually thought of Dr. Cornel West, professor of philosophy at Union Theological Seminary, and he says, "Justice is what love looks like in public, just like tenderness is what love feels like in private." This idea of tenderness and justice, love being living, active, and true. And I think Mother Cabrini really gets to the heart of that in this quote. And so now we're going to close our sharing and then look forward to question and answer and then conversation at the other Zoom link that Nancy was talking about. So I invite us all to close in this prayer, which I wrote this morning, really inspired by the vision and theme of this series, and took some time on the 8th paragraph of Fratelli Tutti, where Pope Francis writes, "How important it is to dream together. By ourselves, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not there. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together. Let us dream then as a single human family, as fellow travelers sharing the same flesh, as children of the same earth, which is our common home. Each of us bringing the richness of his or her beliefs and convictions, each of us with his or her own voice, brothers and sisters all." So with this webinar series, of dreaming of a single human family, we're going to close our section with this prayer. So as you'll see on the slides as we go through, there's a sort of a meditation or name for the heart of Jesus, going back to the Sacred Heart. And then there's an all section. So I'll read the Heart of Jesus section. Nick will read the all section. And even though we're muted, if you'd like to, if you're able to, we invite you to speak the all section out loud. So before the mystery of the heart of Jesus, Frances Cabrini confronted herself, yearning to penetrate the depths of his words and attitudes. Heart of Jesus, invitational and open to all.
Be with us as we dream as a single human family.
Heart of Jesus, suffering in solidarity.
Remind us that we are fellow travelers sharing the same flesh.
Heart of Jesus, who experienced the wounds of prejudice and injustice.
Reveal to us the mirages we hold, fears, prejudices, and all isms that dehumanize.
Heart of Jesus, who walked our common home.
Teach us to care for this earth and all who live here.
Heart of Jesus, compassionate and prophetic.
Challenge us to confront our own biases and welcome transformation for the common good.
Heart of Jesus, home to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Celebrate the richness of voices, beliefs, and convictions among us.
Heart of Jesus.
Allow your dream for humanity to become our dream. Amen.
Nick and Michelle, what a meaningful and inspiring presentation. We are really deeply grateful to both of you. We also like to thank all of the attendees for making this happen and making this possible. Please do not go away. We will have another section of question and answer. The National Shrine also thanks Nancy Goling, Nancy Costello, and the Cabrini University for making this webinar possible. Without you, we couldn't have been able to make this. Stay tuned for our next webinars on February 24th and March 24th as a follow-up with this first presentation. We will have excellent speakers as we had today. So to all of you, thank you very much, and please stay for question and answer. Nancy Goling will be the help us to answer or to have any questions that you may have today. Thanks again, everyone. We love you. God bless.
So Michelle and Nick, I hope you reappear.
Stop sharing.
There you are. You're beautiful.
There you go.
So at this point, there's nothing in the question and answer box. So we